Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about one of the pervasive myths out there that it's been shown by coaches who coach raw lifters repeatedly that it's wrong, that it's incorrect, that it's physiologically incorrect, and it doesn't actually work. And I know Paul Carter is someone who's written a lot of stuff about this, and this is the guy who's got around a 500-pound raw bench press, by the way, who coaches a lot of people, and he will tell you this same thing, that there is no such thing as lockout training for the raw bench press. And your lockout training, everyone out there is always like, oh, this lockout training will make my triceps bigger. No, it won't. Why would it? And we're going to get into that in a second. Because people get this idea in their head that by doing partial reps of some type, or if they put chains on a bar, heavy chains on a bar for accommodating resistance. But the biggest one is lockouts. And I'm going to discuss this on the bench press first. And you guys can extrapolate this to other exercises. And this is going to be even more important for guys who are seeking maximum hypertrophy. I mean, we could talk about this for strength training all day long. And we should, but even guys seeking hypertrophy, I can assure you, if you guys start doing all this lockout work, you're actually going to potentially shortchange your muscular development. Because I can promise you, you guys aren't bench pressing because you want smaller pecs and triceps. All right, if you guys are out there bench pressing or doing any chest press, I can almost guarantee you guys chasing aesthetics, you're doing it because you want your pecs and your triceps to grow. And I think that's universal. No one does these exercises because they don't want them to grow. It's just not how it works. So that being said, when you look at it, people get this idea and they'll say things, well, I'm overloading the top of my bench press. And this comes from equipped lifting, guys. This is a carryover from equipped powerlifting. And I'm not interested in teaching equipped powerlifting because, number one, maybe 2-3% of my audience is going to ever compete in powerlifting. And as of right now, far more people compete raw in powerlifting, and raw is growing at a very, very rapid rate than who compete equipped. Equipped just is a smaller segment. So only 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people who are going to compete in powerlifting are then going to go do the equipped. So we don't really need to get into that. And I would say to anyone who wants to train equipped, go to Westside Barbell. Go to Louis Simmons. That's your best resource. Ignore everybody else in the industry for the most part, other than a few other key people. That should be your main resource. They specialize in that and they're good at it. All right. That's where you need to go. Now, for everyone else, we are either bench pressing to get stronger, or we are bench pressing to put muscle on our upper body. Now, people get the idea that because they can lift a heavier weight through the top half of the exercise, we can just call it 50%. We don't need to go to different boards, or we don't need to discuss, well, what if you skip 2 inches at the bottom, what if you only do the top 2 inches? Those are very extreme examples. Let's just say you're cutting the rep in half. You're stopping halfway down using a board press, which is the safest way to do it, by the way. If you're doing this off pins, you're an idiot. You're going to get hurt. You do not press off pins, at least on any amount of regularity. If you do, well, you're going to have joint problems eventually. It's not going to be fun. Do it for a few years, you're going to have some problems. So you're doing a board press for a soft touch at middle. You're cutting half of the range of motion out, and you might be a guy who you could bench press 275 for 5 reps, right? That's your bench press off your chest. A decent, respectable bench press for a healthy young man. So you can do that, but then you go to the board press and you're like, well, man, I'm really overloading my lockout. So you put how much on the bar? I don't know, 335, 345, and you're able to do 5 reps when you cut the range of motion in half. Then you guys are like, man, that really overloaded the top. Well, here's the thing. If it really overloaded the top, why were you capable of doing it? Again, people are correlating because there's more weight on the bar that the muscles must have worked harder. And here's the question I would ask you. Your muscles worked as hard as they could. If your max 5 rep bench is 275 and you do 5 and you can't do another rep, your muscles already worked as hard as they could. Do you think your triceps get less work at the bottom than they do at the top? Look at a bench press. Your elbow is flexed pretty hard at the bottom of a bench press. Your triceps are being stretched, and then they have to unstretch themselves to help with the exercise. Do you honestly think your triceps are getting less work at the bottom of your 5 rep max? If you do it for full 5 reps, you really think your triceps aren't working really hard at the bottom? They're stretched and they have to unstretch themselves with a heavy weight. Of course they're being worked. Do you think that if you do half reps at the top with a heavier weight that your triceps are working harder? People say, well, I feel it more near the tricep, the base. No, you're feeling your elbow joint. And that pain is radiating. You're not feeling the triceps more. Or you might be feeling them more because you're not used to doing the exercise and they've received a novel stimulus. All right, so if your triceps are working hard at the bottom, same thing with your chest. Do you think your chest, your pectorals, ever stop working anywhere between the top and bottom of a bench press? Do you think your pectorals don't assist in locking the weight out at the top? So I'm going to ask you a question. If you got 2 inches from the lockout on a bench press and your chest muscles just suddenly deactivated, do you think you would lock, or do you think the bar would drop back down and hit you in the chest? It would hit you in the chest. They're still working. Your triceps and your pecs and your anterior delts work on every inch of the bench press, from the pause on the chest to the last inch of the lockout. All right, they all work. So why would you think they're working harder just because you've done a partial? And here's the other thing. Here's why the partial doesn't carry over to the bottom. You're stronger at the top because it's easier. You're stronger at the top because it's easier. And because your joints are at a better anatomical angle, they get a better leverage advantage. In other words, for you, if that's your 5 rep max is 350 on the lockout and 275 on the chest for the half rep, that's because the muscles have to produce the same amount of work, a 5 rep max, to lift 350 that they do to lift 275. All right, your triceps are having to do the same amount of work. They've got a leverage advantage. The lever arms have changed. It's like using a jack to lift a car. So the mere fact that you're capable of lifting the extra 60 or 75 pounds should tell you something. That it isn't any easier. And here's the thing. People will do this and say, well, but I get stuck near there, so I'm convinced that if I train that area, that I'm going to get better at it. And they do. The guy might be doing 345. And then he adds 30 pounds. And before long, he's up to, 385 for sets of 5 on his lockout. But then he goes back to 275 off the chest, and what happens? Does he get stronger? Probably not. Because he hasn't trained to the bottom. There isn't carryover. That strength gain isn't muscle gain. You're not gaining any more muscle. Your muscles are working equally hard. If you do 5x5 with 85% or 80% of your 1 rep max, whether it's a partial or full range of motion, you're getting the same amount of stimulation. You're doing the same amount of relative work. So you might hypertrophy a little bit from that, but here's the thing. Your strength is generally a combination of neural efficiency, which is joint specific, and muscle hypertrophy. You might have gained a little hypertrophy, but you spent time training something and therefore probably did less training at the important ranges of motion where the exercise is harder. So any strength that you gained isn't transferring to the same degree. So what you find, and I have found this personally, is that if you go and split your bench training, let's say you can bench whatever. I went through this messing with Westside stuff myself as a raw bencher. I went and played around with single ply for a bit. I was building back up. I built up to 140 kilo, which is 308 pound bench. I did Westside stuff for a few months, and my bench dropped back under 200 pounds. It dropped, it reduced, and you guys saw me go back on YouTube and start benching again, pause benching again, and what happened? A year later, I was benching 315 for 5 reps, right? From doing full range of motion. What people need to understand is that training these partials doesn't give you carryover. The reason you miss the lockout, if the lockout is hard for you, is because the triceps and the chest got so exhausted moving the weight with enough speed to get you through the hard part that they don't have any strength left at the lockout. Training the lockout isn't going to make the muscles have an easier job working at the bottom. The reason you're missing your lockout is because you're just not strong enough to bench that weight, because you're having to bench it from the bottom to the top. And no amount of lockout training is going to help you get stronger out of the bottom, which is the reason you're missing the lockout. That's why a lot of your benchers, again, guys like Paul Carter who are coaching people, tell them if you're struggling with your lockout on the bench press, you need to get stronger and you need to do more pause benching. You need to get faster and more explosive from the bottom so that it's easier for you to keep the bar moving when you get to your sticking point. Training from the sticking point will not correct that. And if it does correct it, and it can, because any training can help you through a sticking point, if it does correct it, it's going to take you longer to do it by doing the weak point training than had you just focused on getting stronger and getting more explosive from the bottom. It'll actually probably take you longer to fix the problem. It might fix it, but you're going to waste more time and more training sessions getting there. It's counterproductive. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.